Better communication equals more influence, and more influence equals more money. Hi, I'm Jared Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast, and in this episode, I was speaking with Kim Arnold, who is the founder of the world's #1 email writing training course, Email Engagement. Now, this is an available license program that organizations can use to train all their staff to write emails and build relationships, engage, and get results within their business. Now, Kim also works directly with leading organizations to help them connect faster with their stakeholders and get the results they need. She helps thousands of people around the world transform their virtual and in-person communication so they can persuade, influence, and make their message stick. She's worked with clients like Accenture, Sherman, and Sterling, and JP Morgan, and her book Email Attraction was shortlisted in the Financial Times Best Business Books. Now, Kim is regularly featured in the media, like in Forbes and on BBC Radio and CNBC. Now, in this podcast episode, Kim and I were lucky enough to talk about some scary stats on how much time you spend in your inbox and what you can do to reduce that. We could talk about why we need to level up our email communication skills, which can help us get better results in our business. We also talk about how to make people feel good after they have actually read our emails, which, hello, isn't that crazy? It's what we should actually be doing. Nobody wants to get an email and feel like, oh, I'm just drained after it. We want to make people feel good for responding to our emails. And that's what we teach in this podcast episode. We also talk about how to grab attention with your emails and why that's really important at the start of your email. Then we talk about how to keep your emails short and sweet and why that's key these days if you want good virtual communication. Then we dive into nifty tactics and strategies of what you can write in your emails to get people to take some sort of action. We also talk about cool ways to sign off on an email, some ways that, some startups and some tech startups are using to sign off on their emails, which is really, really cool. And we talk about how you can actually connect with the person you're emailing and why that's so valuable and how that can create influence through your communication. Now, there's so much value in this podcast episode. If you have an email and you have an inbox and you're doing it yourself or you have a team, no matter what, you should be listening to this podcast episode because it's so valuable in how you communicate with everybody within your life and within your business that's going to help you get better results. Do you want to build or grow your content website? Niche website builders have helped hundreds of people to take their content websites from a few $100s per month to over tens of thousands of dollars per month with crafted content creation, buying aged domains, and link building strategies. These strategies have helped people increase their traffic, authority, monthly earnings, and their website valuation too. Head to nichewebsite.builders/BOB/ to get 10% off any link building or 10% more from their content creation services. That's nichewebsite.builders/Bob/. I'll put a link in the description too. Kim, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure. Great to be here, Jared.
Now, this conversation that we're going to have is really very relevant to me and my business around communication and people that I've hired to help me with email communication within the business. And there's going to be some selfish questions in here that are going to be also valuable for the listeners too. So we're going to go broad and then we're going to narrow in and then find some golden nuggets within this and treat this like a training episode for not just my team, but everybody else's team when they're hiring assistants and people that can help them with their email communication, even if they're doing it themselves, right? When you meet somebody at a party and they say, "Hey, Kim, what do you do?" What's your answer?
Well, I try not to make them run a mile by talking about email. It's not the sexiest party topic, is it? Hey, what I do. Yeah. But actually, my role is really helping people to engage with those who matter most. So whether that's your customers, your colleagues, your stakeholders, and we do that by helping with email, with virtual communication in general. So we train teams how to communicate better, how to write better, how to have more impact. And we also train trainers in organizations so that they can do that themselves.
Okay, cool. So you train teams in email communication, but this is 2022, we're recording this, and it's going to be relevant moving on into the next decade and even longer with virtual communication. What is email communication, like good email communication? Why is it important for us in our businesses, our online businesses?
Well, there's some really horrifying statistics. We spend on average 52,000 hours of our life on email. So that's about 6 years of your life. And that's more than you're going to spend eating. It's more than you'll spend going on holiday. And it's more than you'll spend socializing.
Wow.
And 90% of people have never been taught how to write a good one. You know, if you think of the money that we might spend on self-improvement, if we're an entrepreneur or if we're, within a business, we train our teams to do sales, we do presentation training, imposter syndrome, we tackle all these things. But the one thing that we're doing day in, day out, we're novices. We really don't have any idea what we're doing. Most of us have learned how to write at school or at university. And, those were essays where people were actually paid to read what you've written. And it's completely useless when it comes to writing really pithy emails where you need to get to the point in seconds. On average, we have 3 seconds to get someone's attention with an email, just 3 seconds before they decide, do you know what? I can't be bothered with this. They click close and they're never going to open your email again. So great email communication is about grabbing attention and sustaining it, and then being very, very clear about what you want to happen next.
Oh, I love it. So let's come back into grabbing attention. I find that super important. In fact, just yesterday, I had this conversation with 2 of my clients in our mastermind around headlines, not just headlines, but also when you first get into the inbox, into the email, how do you get straight to the point, but make it attractive that the person who's reading it, it's about work, but they want to read it because it's important and it's got their it's got them curious. So I'd love to break down that shortly and get a bit more in depth around that. But what are some of the new rules? You say you've got some new rules of communication or for a virtual world. What are some of those new rules that you have coined that we should be understanding and using in our communication in this virtual world of communication, I guess?
Well, I think we need to think more billboard and not Bible. Gone are the days where someone might have only had 10 or 15 emails in their inbox each day, or they would only had emails to deal with. I remember looking at a LinkedIn post the other day, and this entrepreneur was on there, and he was really proud of himself, and he was saying, I've really streamlined everything that I've done, and so I've prioritized my platforms that I use to communicate, and these are the order I do them in. So he had WhatsApp first, then he had Discord, then he had email, then he had Slack, then he had LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter DMs. And literally this list just went on and on and on and on. There were about 17 platforms on there. How this guy got anything done, let alone being super productive, I have no idea. But that is the that is the case for so many of us. We have our phones sitting there blinking away at us, and we our attention is being divided so much. And yet when we communicate with people, we're imagining, and we don't even know that we're doing this, but it's almost like we think, oh, they've got all the time in the world. They've got, a cup of coffee here, and they're just going to sit back and go, oh, wow, I've got an email from Jared. That's awesome. Let me get a cup of coffee. I'm going to set aside half an hour, and I'm just going to, get through it. And of course, that's
like you've
not
been
the
waiting
case.
for this email all day, just ready for it.
Yeah.
But you're not. Yeah.
So there's this big disconnect between the amount of time and energy that people have to consume our emails and our approach. We're still writing too much. We're still waiting too long to get to the point. So, as you say, how we start our emails is so important. And in my book here, Email Attraction, I talk about 3 different parts of an email. And the first one is your hook. And it is about, how do you get that attention in the first 3 seconds? How do you show your audience that this isn't going to be a heavy read. This is something that is going to be useful to you. This is going to be interesting. There's a great quote by the British designer William Morris. He was a 19th century designer, and he says, don't have anything in your house that you don't believe to be beautiful or know to be useful. And it's a bit the same with emails. Look, if it isn't beautiful, so if it isn't like engaging or fun or interesting or different or attention grabbing, or if it's not useful for that person, by the way, for your reader, not for you, if it's not either of those two things, then it needs to go. So we have to be much more ruthless with our approach to email. We need to be more rigorous. We need to imagine our reader drowning in information, and we have to kind of get through all of that to get to them. So we need to work much, much harder than we've ever done to get that attention.
I love that. Let's unpack that. Just before we do, for people listening, we're not talking about our audience of sending out an automated email to thousands and thousands of people on our email list. We're talking about our audience of one person that we're emailing, that we're having communication with, that's either helping us grow our business or is inquiring about our business, or it's a one-to-one conversation virtually via email, right? And so when you say we need to grab attention, we need to do it fast, it needs to be useful, we need to get to the point, what are some of the things that we can do to grab attention that first sort of 3 seconds?
Well, it's interesting that you just mentioned email marketing, and I think there is this big lack of balance really between the time and effort often we put into email marketing, where we're like obsessing over subject lines and openers and response rates and A/B testing and all these things. But the emails we send out every day, we just kind of dash them off like this. So actually applying a bit more of the rigor that we might use in our email marketing to thousands of people to the sort of one-to-one emails is a really good approach and a really good tactic. So your hook, the start of your email, needs to engage people immediately. So ideally you will start with you instead of I. And this is one of the big mistakes that people make writing emails. If you're writing to someone that perhaps you don't know, I'm writing to introduce myself. It's all about me. Or I'm writing to ask for X. I want this, I want that. And of course, the person reading it is just sitting there thinking, well, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
Why should I care?
Yeah.
Why should I care about you? I've got 100 other emails to attend to, and this is all about you. So starting literally with the word you instead of I is a really simple shift that you can make. So instead of, I'm writing to introduce myself, it could be your name came up when I was talking to a mutual friend recently, so that we reframe that in the context of something that's going to pique their interest. Or one of the things that people do a lot is a very generic opener. So I hope you're well. Or, the posher version, I trust this email finds you well. And they're just really bland and generic, and they don't get people's attention. And this is valuable real estate. This is the most expensive part of your email. And you're just wasting it. You're really wasting it. So we need to get personal. If we know that person, make it personal. How was your weekend? Did you get rained on this morning? Probably not in Australia, but certainly here in the UK. How was your daughter's birthday party at the weekend? Did you survive that Zoom marathon that you had on Friday? Something just to engage, something to show your reader, look, I'm not on autopilot. I haven't cut and pasted this. I'm giving you attention, individual attention as my reader. Time and effort and care has gone into that email. And sometimes it's just about that opening sentence is just enough to get people's attention. And conversely, some people don't even need that soft opener. They want to just get to the point. We've always all worked with those people who have maybe just reply with one-line emails. They want to get to the point. So that's okay too. Sometimes it's like, look, here's the data you asked for, or yes, we can make that happen for you. and you can just get to the point. So we need to get a bit more creative about these hooks, these openers to our emails.
I love it. Using the word you, getting to the point. But the big thing that I want to touch on and unpack now is you mentioned connecting with them, making it personal. And I think what I like to do when I'm teaching people that are helping me with my emails, because my inbox is going just next level crazy. It's just too much. So I'm trying to teach what I do unconsciously. And what I like to do is make my emails personal, because the goal is to deepen the relationship through the communication for us, because that builds our brand, provides more trust, and it helps both parties connect at a higher level, and both of us respect each other for it, so we can both get what we want out of our communication effectively. And one of the ways that I like to do it is making it personal. And what I like to teach is at least acknowledging what the person has previously said in their email. For example, they may say something about their life. They may say something about something that has happened. And the first thing that we write is at least acknowledging, be like, oh, that's crazy. Can't believe that really happened to you. Or thanks for letting me know. I didn't know how hard that was, and or whatever it is, depending on what they said in their email. But I feel really acknowledging provides a deeper connection at the start of the email. And I think like adding the you and some of the other things you mentioned are really good. Do you have some other ways that we can connect deeper through our communication virtually via email?
Sure, and I love that example that you've just given. It's a great strategy because it shows you're listening. Email is I
Shows you
call it
care.
a
That's the most important thing, right?
yeah. It's a conversation with a pause. That's how it should feel. This isn't a monologue, and so far too often we treat it like almost like a sort of posting platform rather than an engagement and conversation. So when we start thinking of it as a conversation, well, what would you say in person? As you said, you would acknowledge what someone has said. You would ask them how they are and really want to know the answer. So I think that's a great technique. The other thing that we can do is really watch the kind of language that we use, specifically the types of words that we use. Because typically, I might say to you, "Oh, hey Jared, how you doing? How was your weekend?" But then when people come to email, it would be, "Dear Jared, I trust this email finds you well. Further to our conversation last week, please find attached the report. Kind regards." And we slip into quite a formal mode of speech on email, and it can be quite subconscious. But there are many reasons that we do this. I think particularly older generations, this was more expected, this sort of very professional speak. People who might have started their careers in corporates as well, that can be very hard to sort of shake off that formal language. But we really need to be careful because that kind of language creates distance and it creates barriers. And what we want to do is create nearness and a sense of conversation. So using language that we would say with someone in person is so important. So down to words like utilize. I wouldn't say to my kids, "Oh, here, stop eating your chips with your hand. Can you utilize some cutlery?" It just wouldn't happen. So we
Yeah.
need to use really straightforward, down to earth language. Use, not utilize. And we need to think about how we structure our sentences. So using contractions can be a really great way to sound more conversational. So instead of we will come back to you, we'll come back to you. I'll instead of I will, we're instead of we are. So that just loosens up your language a little bit. And it makes it much easier to read because we're not having to struggle with longer words. It makes our emails shorter in general, which everyone loves. No one said, "Oh, I wish, it's a great email, but I wish it had been, longer." Like it just doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
there are lots and lots of benefits for conversational language, but that engagement, feeling like you're having a conversation with someone, but it just happens to be over email, but it's very similar to the conversation that you might have on the phone or in person, and that's really important.
Oh, it's so good to hear. These are some of the things that I have taught that I didn't consciously know that I did with my emails until I had to teach it. And I want to ask you a question around branding and personalization in how we speak. For example, is it valuable to, like, I'm an Australian and I have Australian slang. I used to put a lot more pressure and stress on myself to be serious and professional because I was in a business. I'm teaching people to buy business, right? So I've got to be professional, of course. And I used to treat that pretty seriously. And now that I've realized that the more I am myself in my language, in my podcast content, conversations, and emails, the deeper the relationships can become. And so I'm embracing my slang, like saying mate, saying bloke, saying all these different things that we say in Australia, which is pretty normal. I used to even change my tone and try to not have as much accent. But now I'm really harnessing it. And I do that in my email communication virtually. I'll say, g'day, mate. I'll say different things that are very unique to how I talk usually. Is that valuable for people when you're communicating with them, being yourself? Like, I know that may sound over the top, me, that's just how I talk, right? So why don't I type like that? Is that what you're suggesting doing, is personalizing it by bringing ourselves into emails and just talking through email how we would normally talk verbally?
Absolutely. Obviously we need to be mindful of our audience. So, if we were writing to the chairman of the board, we might want to rein it in a bit.
Yeah.
But in general, we can put so much more of our own personality into our emails than we think we can. And if you think about the emails that you enjoy receiving, the ones where if you get an email from them, you're like, oh, I'm going to open that one. I'm going to open that one. Generally, it's from those people that put their personality into their emails. They sound friendly, they sound warm, and they sound like them. So, and I've been on a very similar journey to you, Jared. I came from a corporate background. I was a global head of comms. I was very used 15 years ago. I was very used to writing in quite a buttoned up and formal way. And it can feel quite vulnerable at first to loosen up and let a bit more of yourself out there. But I work with corporates now and all sorts of businesses, and they get full Kim every time. They get, I used to be very afraid of exclamation marks, for example, in emails, and worrying that they might make me look a bit flippant or frivolous. But that's how I speak. I have energy. I get excited about things. So I'm going to put my exclamation mark in there if I'm excited about something. And likewise, as you say, with local slang, if you sent me a brilliant email. Actually, when I didn't respond to your first email about this podcast, I was having a crazy week. And you sent me a follow up and it said, shall I send out the search party, Kim? And it made me laugh so much. You got an instant reply. And I
Yes.
think that's a great example. It's about being the best thing in someone's inbox. How can you be a bright spark in their inbox? And more often than not, you can do that by sharing your personality. The other interesting point to this, and when I'm talking to corporates about this, when we're talking about personal brand, the way that we get people to trust us is by consistency. Having a very different online persona to how you are in real life is more of a problem these days because the two worlds are clashing far more than they ever were. We're seeing people on camera now. So, it's not just a telephone. So our worlds need to mesh. And so many times, there's actually a teacher at one of my children's school. They go to different schools, so I'm not going to name the child or the school, who sends horrible emails that sound really prickly and, slightly passive aggressive. And I know this person in real life is warm, friendly, caring, and lovely. But because the tone is so formal and stiff and buttoned up, and it makes her sound like a completely different person. So it can have that real detrimental effect about making people feel that we're someone different. Perhaps we come across as a bit cold or standoffish or prim or uptight or just not fun. So yeah, I'm all for it, and I think this will happen more and more. There's great TikTok videos out there with Gen Z companies who are saying, look, this is how we sign off our emails. And it's like, hey, bye, or laters, or finger guns was another one that someone had written finger guns to sign off their email. And I'm like, so I love this. It will not, it doesn't necessarily work for, every environment. I'm sure my corporate clients would probably still have a heart attack if I sent them something like that. But I love this new energy that younger generations are bringing to email, and I think I'm all for it.
There's two things that you mentioned that just connected really well in your explanation, is like how you feel about the email being prickly. And I thought about, I was about to ask you a question from the word that you used, feel, how you feel about the email. And then you mentioned the old mate finger guns. And then you also mentioned, signing off in, haha, bye. I want to ask you, what are some of the other ways? I guess what's important is to people finish an email and be like, yes, that was good. I'm glad I replied to that, or I'm glad I read that. We can come back to like how bad a paragraph. So I'd probably put a blanket statement in here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that any paragraph in an email doesn't belong. But also, to add to that, what are some of the other things that we can do to make sure people feel good about reading our emails, other than just sign off and some of the other things? I know that we mentioned a few, but maybe you've got some more in the toolkit.
Oh, there's always more. There's always more. So many. This baby took a couple of years to write. So there's some amazing tips in here. But yeah, emails that are easy to read take a bit more time and effort to write. So easy reading is hard writing, and this is what we need to remember. So quite often we're on autopilot with emails. So we're sitting there, we're like, oh, right, I'm going to bang out 20 emails this morning. Woo, I'm going to do this. This is great. And we give ourselves a pat on the back, high five. I've done it. Great. I'm going to go and get that coffee that I, promised myself. But actually we need to value quality over quantity so much more. So putting more time and effort into each email, really thinking about our audience. Who am I writing to? How much, what's their email style? How, can I be finger guns, or do I need to be a little bit more buttoned up? Are they a one-liner? I used to have a boss who used to reply to emails with Nike, which meant just do it. I never sent him more than 10 words at a time, because I knew it would really frustrate him. So who am I writing? I call it my 3 W's in the book. So who am I writing to? What do I want to happen next? And this is an interesting one, because very often when I challenge my clients on this, and we're sitting there in a training session and we're looking at an old email that they might have written, they brought along with them, I say, okay, what was the one thing that you wanted to happen next? And they go, I think it was this. And I said, look, it's taken you a minute to think about what you wanted. The reader's never going to know, and they're not going to bother wading through this email. So really having clarity about what is the one thing that you want to happen next. So who are you writing to? What's the one thing that you want to happen next? And the third W is why. Why should they care? What's in it for them? And it's amazing how many things we can switch on their heads a little bit that make them, going back to my earlier point about being less me, and more about the other person. This can really, really help. So if you are, asking someone, I had a great feedback actually from someone who read the book, and she's like, Kim, oh my God, this actually works. I've had 100% reply to my email, and I'm a company secretary in a bank, and I only write to ask people for boring and mundane things, And she'd found that just by shifting this, she was asking people to fill out reports and gather information and, do all this kind of really dry stuff. But she was finding a way to make it interesting to them. If you do this, then this benefit might happen. So that's really important. So those 3 whys, I think, help us to get in that right headspace. To your point, the next thing that we really need to remember is, as you say, if it's not vital, ditch it. One of my latest trainers for my email engagement program, one of the trainers that we've trained, he said, Kim, I call it scorched earth tactics. I go back to my email and I just rip stuff out. And he says, I'm careful not to strip out personality. That has to stay. My voice, the warmth, the friendliness. But if it's not absolutely vital, it's got to go. And I liken this to, packing your suitcase to go on vacation. It's very easy just to dump stuff in, it's like, oh, I'm going for 3 days, but I'm going to, pack, 10 pairs of underwear. Like you just don't need this stuff. But hey, look, my suitcase is this big and I can fit it all in. And then you get there and you don't wear the stuff and you think, oh my goodness, I could have just taken hand luggage, and I'm never going to do this again. And it's the same with your email. Just because you can write it doesn't mean you should. So stripping back, is this really important? Can I strip out redundant words like, I've just used one, really, very, definitely? Are there kind of clunky phrases with regards to stuff like this that we just can pull? Am I beating around the bush? Is there stuff, quite often at the moment, I see a lot of my clients writing emails because we're all hybrid working. It's like, oh, are you free next week or the week after to do a call? Or would you prefer Zoom or maybe Teams? Or are you back in the office a couple of days a week? Maybe we could do a coffee, but it's okay if you prefer a phone call. Let me know what you want. And it's
decision fatigue right there. Yeah. That's all it is in that email, just decision fatigue.
Exactly. So, all of that, thinking about how we can just strip out, be more precise. Are you free on Tuesday for, at 2:00 for a coffee? If they're not, they will come back and tell you, but let's make it easy for them. Let's strip out all that unwanted information so that they can really get to the point and, make it easy for them. They've got limited time, and they will appreciate if you're that bright spot in their inbox. You get to the point. You're friendly, you're warm, you're engaging, you're interesting, and you just get to the point. Everyone loves that.
Yeah, I really like that explanation. And when you're thinking about that, I like to think of quick, quirky, usually it's clickbaity titles and stuff like that. But the coffee thing is like my explanation. If I was to teach somebody to write an email that like, hey, do you want to go get a coffee? Would be like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much you like coffee, ? Let's catch up Tuesday this time or Wednesday this time, ? And then finger guns. What do you reckon? Would that work?
Yeah, well, look, I always say to clients, experiment. I think sometimes we can go too clickbaity. I think there's a bit of sort of tiredness now, like, oh God, another cheesy sales email where they're just trying to get my attention with something kind of weird. I saw one on LinkedIn the other day that was entitled something like, someone had posted it and said, I just got this. And it was called something like, your dog just died, or something horrific like that. And the email, and it was like, haha, just joking. I wanted to get your attention. But exactly. So I think there's a delicate balance there. People still want to feel like, even if you might be sending out 30 of these emails a week, this is still personal. So I do encourage, wherever you can, to find that thing, going back to what you were saying, what is that one thing that you know about that other person? Can you reference something that they've done recently? Everyone likes to have their ego flattered a little bit. So, that really great article that you wrote, but reference something specific in it. So I thought your point around, I don't know, employer branding was really interesting. My take on it is this. Anyway, would love to continue the discussion. So just showing that you are taking a real interest in them. We all like to be made to feel special. And you have the power to do that with email. So getting that balance right, I think is really important.
I love it. I love it. If people didn't get good enough reason in this podcast episode, they should have. But if they need more encouragement, tell us why people should get your book.
Well, it's short for a start, so you can read this baby in an hour and a half, and it's short and sweet, a little bit like me, and it's going to give you really practical advice. This isn't a business book. God knows, we all have them, don't we? All the business books that sit on our shelves that we're like, I really am going to read it. And it's just gathering dust, and I didn't want to write those. So it's short, it's sweet, it's packed full of weird illustrations. It's got lots of email makeovers before and afters, so that you can really see those transformations as well. And there's all sorts of emails in there. So examples from, if you're writing to someone you don't know, or if it's someone, a colleague or a stakeholder, all sorts of different ones. It will teach you how to start your emails, end your emails, and everything in between. So Email Attraction is the book. Email Engagement is the program, if anyone wants to get in touch.
There'll be links to both of those in the show notes, definitely. So thank you so much. Going to have to get a couple of copies of those for the team now. Thank you so much for coming on. For everybody that is listening, thank you for listening. If you are going to own an online business, you'd be ridiculous not to listen to this podcast episode again and level up your email communication. But also, if you know anybody else with an online business, they're definitely leaving communication between themselves and their customers at a bare minimum and not doing themselves and their business justice if you don't share this podcast episode with them. So please do so. Yes, selfishly, it helps us help more people with the show, but it would be great to help more people that you know have better email communication. So thanks so much for coming on, Kim. I'll speak to you guys soon.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Hey YouTube watcher, if you thought that video was good, you should check out this video here on the 2 best types of websites beginners should buy. Or check out my playlist on how I made my first 100K from buying websites and how to do due diligence. Check it out. It's an awesome playlist. You'll enjoy it.